Bringing people and communities together on seclosounds.org.
Your listening station.
We're coming up to the busiest time of the travel industry's year. It's the school summer holidays. Can be a stressful period. I talk through some tips and hints to help you reduce the stresses that will come your way. That's coming up on the Guinn Travel Show on seclosounds.org. Hello and welcome to the Guinn Travel Show on seclosounds.org. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Travel Show. At the end of the show, I'll be replaying an interview I did with the AA to find out how you can stay on the road when you're travelling around the UK this summer. I was on a contract for another company and I used their vehicle, and I should have taken some of the tips that are shared on this interview before I drove because I thought I wasn't going to be able to get home. So as a reminder to myself about how you should prepare when you're going on a road trip in the summer, I'm replaying the interview at the end of the show. But before that, I'm going through hints and tips on how to reduce stresses that may come your way if you're travelling at the busiest time of the year, which is July, August, the school summer holidays. And I'll also be talking about how the security checks work, how the equipment works. So we're going through the basics. I'll be trying not to get too technical. I learned a lot by putting this together, so hopefully you will learn something too. The school summer holidays will soon be here, which should be a time to look forward to. However, I know that for some, this will be a really stressful time. A family solicitor in my local business networking group just used to love the school summer holidays. He knew that he would be getting plenty of work come September, as couples found they just couldn't spend any more time together, and the family summer holiday was the straw that finally broke the back of the relationship. The first day of the school holidays always seemed to me to be mentioned in the media, as it is such a busy day. A few years ago, as an experiment, I once travelled from London Luton Airport on the first Saturday of the school summer holidays, just to experience it for myself. You could tell which families would probably be having a bad time, as the heated arguments had already started and they hadn't even left the country yet. And now, through work, I spend a lot of time at Luton Airport, and I can see how the stress of passing through unfamiliar surroundings can be too much for the infrequent traveller. To some people, airports and flights are just simple processes, and they don't give it a second thought. To others, well, let's just say it's a different story. You may be surprised how little some passengers know about passing through the different parts of airports. The next time you fly from a regional airport, just take some time out to people watch and you'll soon see what I mean. And of course, now that most people book via the internet and don't have package holidays, problems can also occur in resort. It's easy to find advice on when and where to travel or how to find the best deal. However, the little details can be missed as too many travel experts assume that everybody knows how to do the basics. So, as the school summer holidays approach, I'm going to go through a little guide now on how to reduce any stresses that may happen on the first few days of your holiday. The first thing is to have a packing list. Don't leave anyone or anything behind. Write down everything that you need to pack and tick it off as you pack it. If you need to take medication with you, check the medicine's legal status in your destination country, or every country that you have to pass through customs on the way to your final destination. Not all prescription drugs from the UK, or even some of the over-the-counter medication, are legal in every country. Did you know that Vicks inhalers are forbidden in Japan? For a packing list, you can use an online web service such as www.packinglistonline.com. So, getting to the airport. How are you getting there? Are you going to travel down the day before? Personally, I believe that it's better to go down the day before instead of travelling down on the day of your flight. There always seems to be a problem on the M11 for Stansted every other day. And a few days ago, I drove back from Morecambe to Milton Keynes. It should have taken 3.5 hours. It took over 5. If I was going to an airport, I would have missed my flight. There's also, at Luton Airport, there's roadworks at the moment, and then combine that with the rush hour, plenty of travellers are missing or nearly missing their flights first thing at Luton Airport. So when it comes to getting to the airport, don't make the mistake of thinking that you have until the departure time to get on that plane. Different airlines have different rules. You may think that you have 3 hours, but it might be just over 2. You also have to allow for the time to get through security and to the gate as well. Let's say your Ryanair flight leaves at 9 o'clock in the morning. This will mean that the bag drop-off check-in part will close at 8:20. The boarding gate closes at 8:40. If you drop your bag off at the last minute, you have 20 minutes to get through security and to your gate. As the furthest gate at Luton Airport takes 15 minutes to walk to, that then leaves you 5 minutes to get through security. And if you haven't paid for Priority Channel, you're not going to make it. And if you miss your flight at Luton Airport, you could be spending 2 hours or more hanging around waiting for your airline to come and collect you and take you back landside. Still want to drive down on the day of the flight? I'm not so sure.
Gary Fitz here, every Monday, 10 o'clock.
Coming up, we've got Eric and Ernie.
Join me here on Seclo Sounds.
In your smile.
This from 1975, Eric and Ernie were 4...
Gary, it's not Eric and Ernie, it's Earl and Ernie, the Cape Brothers, Union Man.
Oh, I see.
Gary Fitz here, every Monday, 10 o'clock.
Earl and Ernie.
You're listening to the John Guinn Travel Show on seclosounds.org. So this week I'm going through some tips on how to reduce any stresses you may face when you're going on your summer holiday this year. School summer holidays, a very busy time to travel. Lots of people have arguments, and I already mentioned earlier in the show that a family solicitor, or divorce brief if you like to put it, used to love the summer holidays because he used to get a lot more business in September because the families just broke up because of the holidays. And before the break I was talking about how to get to the airport, whether you should go down the day before or the day of the flight. But one of the biggest stresses at the airports at the moment are the security checks. And so before you get to the gate, you have to get through. And these security rules in general have been around for a long time, but they still catch people out. It's almost as though some people think that the rules just do not apply to them. And with the recent changes in security for electronic devices being all over the TV and press over the last 10 days or so, you have no excuse not to be ready for the checks. It's not as though there isn't plenty of warning posters for you to see either when you're walking from the bag drop-off or check-in desk to the security. Airline security apparently should come under the remit of the International Civil Aviation Organisation, ICAO. This is a UN specialised agency created in 1944 upon the signing of the Convention on International Civil Aviation, known as the Chicago Convention. I did mention this organisation a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about the history of package holidays. The rules set up by the ICAO are then applied by each government as they see fit. I say as they see fit as I've been trying to find out why some UK airports in the UK don't seem to apply the rules in the same way as each other. I spoke to the ICAO and they said it was down to the governments, but I spoke to the government, which in the case of the UK is the Department for Transport, and I'm not getting any joy coming out. I guess they just don't want to share all their security information. I've also asked the Department for Transport why the clear plastic bag for liquids is the size it is, but so far I've drawn a blank on that too. However, the last 10 days or so have shown that individual countries do not base their security checks on the ICAO or their local needs. It looks like they actually base them on what America tells everybody. How's it going to be? So now, all electronic devices must be shown to be operational before they're allowed on board. Some of the small regional airports are not doing this yet because they have no flights going anywhere near the United States. But if you go somewhere like Gatwick or Heathrow, they're probably going to be doing this to every passenger because it's a lot easier doing every passenger than it is to say, wherever you're flying, let's see your boarding pass and check. So they just do a blanket check. But you should be ready for this wherever you fly from. Devices appears to include mobile phones, laptops, but also tablet devices, MP3 players, hair dryers, straighteners, cameras and camera equipment, travel irons and electric shavers. Checks for devices and checked luggage are not being published at the minute. However, all locked cases on flights to the USA must be locked by a TSA approved lock, which the TSA has all the pass keys and codes for. The TSA is the United States Transport Security Administration and, as I said, appears to rule the world's airline network. If a case is selected for a random check or is suspicious, then the TSA staff can open the case with a master key, which makes life easier for them and should prevent any damage to the cases and locks. However, if you were to do a quick check on YouTube, you could see that you can get into most suitcases using a big biro. Anyway, this extra check was just meant to be for flights to the USA or neighbouring countries, and then certain random flights, but as I've already said, it's easier to do everybody from an airport which flies in that direction rather than separate everybody out. But let's be honest, the checks are going to take longer and even more time will be wasted by people trying to get around this and believing that they're not eligible for it. So, as I already mentioned about making sure you have enough time to check in and get through the gates and security, you should allow it even longer now. But it's one thing talking about airport security, but what actually is it? It's to prevent a plane being hijacked, blown up or used as a missile, put quite simply. Well, that's the official view anyway. Some civil rights campaigners believe that the security checks are just there to scare the public into allowing the governments to do what they want to do. I wouldn't go that far, but I'm not sure if the lack of incidents is due to security checks or just the fact that nobody has tried to repeat the 9/11 attacks, or the shoe bomb, or the pants bomb, etc. Security starts at the airport boundary with high fences and walls, patrols and manned barriers. The secure part of the airport will probably be all classed as airside, and the least secure of any part of any airport is landside, which is the public area in departures and arrivals. Some landside areas are also secure, such as fuel storage areas. And when I worked in public safety telecommunications way back when, they used to actually be parked right next to the terminal building. They can't do that anymore. And barriers are used to prevent vehicles from being driven into the terminal building. And you may remember that terrorists did try that in Glasgow in 2007, but the barriers managed to keep the vehicle out of the building. So, before I go through how to prepare for the security checks, I thought I'd talk about how the equipment works. And I'll be coming back to that in a few moments. You're listening to the John Guinn Travel Show on seclosounds.org. Later in the show, I'll be replaying the interview I did with the AA, finding out how you can make sure you stay on the road this summer when you're driving around the UK. So, a few moments ago, I said I was going to talk to you about how the security checks actually work. All passengers have to walk through a metal detector, even those who are working in security. Everyone who works airside at an airport goes through the same checks as the passenger. So please remember that when you're having a hard time with security. Don't forget, everybody in the airport has to go through the same thing. So when it comes to security, there isn't any them and us. But these metal detectors, nearly all of them work on a pulse induction system, or PI. PI systems use a coil of wire on one side of the arch as both the transmitter and the receiver. Short pulses of current are sent through this coil. This generates a brief magnetic field, and when the pulse is completed, the magnetic field reverses polarity, I hope I'm not getting too technical here, before collapsing. This results in a sharp electronic spike. This spike, which only lasts a few microseconds, causes another current to run through the coil. And this second current is called the reflected pulse and lasts around about 30 microseconds. A typical PI-based metal detector sends between 25 and around about 1,000 pulses per second. So, how does this detect metal? Well, if a metallic object passes through the archway, the pulse creates an opposite magnetic field in the object. And when the pulse's magnetic field collapses, the magnetic field of the object means that it takes longer for the reflected pulse to completely disappear. The time taken for the reflected pulse to disappear is measured, and if it takes more than a few microseconds than is expected, then the alarm goes off. Also, sometimes the alarm does go off randomly as well, and when the alarm goes off, a member of security will then come and pat you down, make sure you take your belt off and your shoes. You might have to go through the archway again, or they might use a handheld scanner. So if you're a frequent traveller, you could find that you're wearing exactly the same stuff every time you fly, but sometimes the alarm goes off and sometimes it doesn't. It can't hurt to have a bit of random checks in there as well. If you have a replacement joint, that could mean a lot of checks at airports. There isn't any real way of identifying yourself as somebody who's got metal bits in their body. Unfortunately, you just have to put up with all the extra checks. And sometimes that does mean that some clothing has to be removed. But don't worry, if you do have to remove your clothing, you won't be doing it out in the public. You'll be behind some curtain. Also, underwire bras can cause a problem as well, which is why I no longer wear them when I'm travelling. And while we're at it, just to remind you that you should never, ever mention the word bomb. Every mention of this word has to be taken seriously at an airport. There's no room for jokes. And you just don't want to go there. Let's put it like that. Not that I've done it, but you just don't want to go there. So, you've gone through the archway, you're clear. What about your hand luggage and the jackets and belts and liquids and shoes? Well, they go through an X-ray machine. The machines used are usually based on a dual energy X-ray system. This system has a single X-ray source sending out X-rays, typically in a range of 140 to 160 kilovolt peak, or kVp. kVp is the unit used to show the amount of penetration that an X-ray machine makes. The higher the Kp, the further the X-ray penetrates. The X-rays pass through an item and picked up in a detector. From here, the X-rays pass through a filter, which removes the lower energy X-rays. The remaining X-rays reach a second detector, and a computer compares the pickup from the two detectors. Different materials absorb X-rays at different levels, which produces an image on the monitor, which allows the machine operator to see distinct items inside your bag. The level of energy that can pass through an object produces different colours on the display. Objects are shown to be organic, inorganic, or metallic. Now, the colours on the display can vary depending on the manufacturer, but all units should show organic as orange. This is because most explosives are organic in nature. Operators are also looking for suspicious items as well, such as guns, knives, IEDs. And any liquids that are contained in containers over 100 millilitres easy to spot during these checks too. All modern carry-on X-ray systems are considered film safe, if anybody still uses film in their cameras nowadays. So the amount of X-ray radiation is not high enough to damage photographic film. Electronic media can also withstand much more radiation than film can, so they're also safe from damage. However, many of the systems used to examine checked luggage or suitcases can damage film, although electronic media is still safe. So you should always carry film with you on the plane. As electronic items, such as laptop computers, have so many different items packed into a relatively small area, it can be difficult to determine if a bomb is hidden inside the device. So this is why these are taken out of your bag and checked separately, just to make the scanning easier. And now, as I've mentioned, the new rules, you'll be asked to switch it on too to make sure that it works. The final check is a random one. This check tells me that the one reason I found mentioned for the size of the clear plastic bags for liquids is wrong. It is said that the current crop of detectors can only measure fumes in these size bags. If they get any bigger, the fumes become too dilated and the sensors can't pick them up. But as far as I can tell, the bags aren't tested for fumes at all, so I still don't know why the bags are 20 centimetres by 20 centimetres. But back to explosive fumes, these are detected by a chemical sniffer. At random intervals, or if the suspicions are raised, a security attendant wipes a cloth over the object, such as a mobile phone, a passport, or even the handles on your bag. This cloth is then placed inside the sniffer. The sniffer analyses the cloth for any trace of residue or the types of chemicals that are used to make bombs. If any residue is detected, an alarm goes off. Some airports also have handheld versions of the sniffer that can sniff lockers and other enclosed spaces and unattended luggage. And also some sniffers can be used to detect drugs. I got tested in Tobago, a long time ago, and it worried me because if I touched anything, I was always worried that the residue may show up on the test, because you hear about so many dollar bills all have traces of cocaine on them and stuff. So that was a bit worrying. But they can use the same sort of system to detect drugs as well. And also there are random sniffer dogs which are used to check passengers. Recently I discovered that it's very difficult to pee in a urinal at an airport when a sniffer dog is sniffing around your ankles. And when I came back from Jamaica last year, the sniffer dog took a keen interest in me because I was wearing my dog walking boots, so I had a lot of interesting smells on my feet. There is a final electronic version of method of checking a passenger, and this is the controversial backscatter X-ray machines. These are the ones that can see through your clothes and see all your dangly bits. Because of the images produced, many feel that they're an invasion of privacy, and some worry that the images may be stored for entertainment purposes. At the moment in the UK you can actually opt out of these checks, but you will have an enhanced hand search pat down, which will probably mean undressing down to your underwear. So, that's how the checks are made, but what are they and how should you prepare for them?
This is Seclo Sounds. Join us every Wednesday at 7 p.m. for 1 hour in the company of Harry and Edna on the wireless, exploring all aspects of the vintage scene and playing tip-top gramophone tunes. Harry and Edna on the wireless, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on seclosounds.org. Jolly good.
My name's Teresa Kelleher. Join me on Seclo Sounds every Wednesday at 8 p.m. for my show Inspired by Jazz. Each week I'll take you on a journey as I feature the music, the maestros and the melodies. That's Inspired by Jazz with me, Teresa, every Wednesday at 8 p.m. on Seclo Sounds.
You're listening to the John Guinn Travel Show on seclosounds.org. So I've briefly explained about how the checks are made, but what are they and how should you prepare for them? Well, the first thing you should do is check the hand luggage limit set by the airport. Can you take one bag or two on board? A handbag counts as one bag, so you need to check by visiting the airport's website. Also, check the airline's website too to see what you can and can't take on, just in case if the limit set by the airline is less than the limit set by the airport. You should wear shoes that can be easily taken off, as you'll probably have to remove them. So, on this occasion, high boots are probably a bad idea. You should also make sure that you're wearing socks as well, as you may not be able to get those plastic bags to cover your feet while you're waiting for the return of your footwear. If you can, try to carry your luggage in your checked baggage. And if you're travelling just using hand luggage, then you'll need to get your toiletries once you reach your destination. The limit on each liquid is 100 millilitres in a container that can only hold up to 100 millilitres. 100 millilitres in a container that can hold 750 won't do. You have to throw the bottle away. Or you can keep the bottle, but you have to dispose of the 100 millilitres that are in it. Restrictions on liquids also include paste such as toothpaste and makeup. So if you can, don't carry it through check-in. In your hand luggage, check it in to the stowage. All your liquids must be placed in the containers, obviously, in a clear plastic bag no larger than 20 centimetres by 20 centimetres. This bag must pass through the X-ray machine separately or in the same tray as your hand luggage, but outside of the bag that you're using to carry all your hand luggage in. If the bag cannot be sealed, then you will be asked to dispose of some of the items in this plastic bag until you can seal it. Some airports, such as Luton Airport, actually charge for these plastic bags, and they can be found in machines all through the security section. If you miss all the opportunities to get one all the way up to the archway, once you're through that archway, you'll have to leave all your stuff unattended with the security people while you go off and get a bag. So perhaps never pass up the opportunity to make sure you've got the right size bag. Jackets and coats will also have to be removed before you pass through the security archway. And as already mentioned, laptops and tablets will have to be removed from their carry cases. You must remember that you should never ever argue with security staff. You will not win. They are there to prevent anything suspicious getting through onto the aircraft. If they are wrong about something, it is unlikely that they will double check it. They'll never double check it if you're aggressive to them. So if you believe there is a mistake, be calm, be polite, and ask to speak to the supervisor. Don't demand anything. As I already mentioned, never ever mention the word bomb. Everything is at the discretion of the security team. You may have an item in your hand luggage that is not on the ban list, but if you're carrying an unusual amount of it, say you're taking these little metal canisters you use to inflate bikes if you're cycling. They used to look like the little gas taps if you did your own homebrew, if you can remember that far back. They don't appear that on the list of things you can't take on, but if you've got a dozen or so, then the chances are you're going to lose around 10 of them. Always keep up to date with security rules on your departure airport before you fly, so keep checking up until the last minute. So, you've gone through the archway, your hand luggage has gone through the X-ray machines. What about your checked baggage? Everything that goes on board an airplane gets checked, and I've just gone through the checks carried out on people and their hand luggage. So now we're moving on to the checked baggage and cargo. And cargo, for the sake of this show, means everything, including the meals, the drinks and the duty free. Well, of course, there's X-ray detection, and there's about 3 systems in common use. There's a mobile one, which is usually a large truck. It checks other trucks, and the truck being checked is parked up and the X-ray truck drives slowly past it, scanning through. There's medium X-ray detection, which are used to scan pallets of cargo for suspicious items. And there's fixed sight, which is basically a large warehouse or room, which is in fact the X-ray machine, and it's used to scan trucks. Other methods of checking suitcases is to use computer tomography or CT scanners. This is a hollow tube, the same as if you've been on one of these medical scanners, or if you've seen the medical scanners on TV where a person gets put in a tube. The X-ray unit revolves slowly around the tube, hitting all the contents in the tube with X-rays and recording the images produced. What this does, it produces a slice of the suitcase known as a tomogram, and the computer calculates the mass and density of the item, and if it's believed to be a hazardous substance, an alarm is automatically raised. Unfortunately, CT scanning is a slow process, so they only check on suspicious suitcases. Suspect items could be a case belonging to somebody who's booked a ticket in an unusual way or has gone on a high-risk route, so they could profile person and then pick their case out for the CT scan. But although not everything is CT scanned, everything is checked, then so it should make you feel a little bit more reassured. And these baggage cargo machines have a much higher KVP, as already mentioned, than the hand luggage items. So if you have film in there, the chances are it probably will get fried. And of course, not only that, they're sniffer dogs as well. And finally, about security, before I move on to other tips about removing stress, air marshals. As I'd already mentioned earlier in the show, it appears that the USA actually decides on the airline security policies for other countries. And the one final line of defence is to have air marshals on board. An air marshal is an armed law enforcement officer, although whose law has been enforced in an international airspace is up to debate. To be honest, I thought these come about after 9/11, but apparently there have been air marshals on USA flights since the 1970s. Only the Marshal Service knows which flights are marshalled along, so next time you're flying in America, it could be the guy sitting next to you in that 10-gallon hat with the big badge. Also, since 9/11, cockpit doors have been locked during flight as well, which is a shame, because I used to be really afraid of flying, and to try and calm me down, the flight attendant took me into the cockpit so I could have a look around. And I have to tell you that the view of a sunrise from the cockpit is magical. It's really good, but unfortunately, now the chances of you seeing that are pretty slim. But that's all the security out of the way. You can contact us or just keep up to date with travel news at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show.
This is Seclo Sounds, your community radio station. If you'd like to volunteer some of your time and skills with Seclo Sounds, send an email to volunteers@seclosounds.org and let us know how you would like to be involved. MK Flyers Online, the fast and simple way to find any kind of business or service locally. Find us at mkflyersonline.co.uk or download the MK Flyers mobile app from your app store. MK Flyers Online proudly supports Seclo Sounds, community radio for Milton Keynes.
The John Guinn Travel Show. Checking it out before you check in on seclosounds.org. So I've gone through the preparing for the airport, make sure you get there on time, how to allow time to go through security when the gates close, how long it takes to get to gates, and also how the security checks are carried out, as well as one or two extra little bits and pieces. So here are some other tips to help to reduce any stresses that may come your way during this year's school summer holiday. A little bit now about flying with children. As everybody knows, some children are more quieter than others, but all noisy children annoy other passengers, especially on a long haul flight. So make sure you have a plan to keep your children happy and contented during the flight. Do remember that your fellow passengers can't escape to find some peace and quiet. So include the following in your hand luggage: A change of clothes for everyone, just in case there's an accident. Healthy food for snacks. Any medicines that you require. Don't forget the game chargers and adapters, so make sure everything's fully charged up. You should pack some surprises as well, such as a game or a book that somebody wanted. And these can be handed out at a stressful time trying to calm the child down. And also, I said about the change of clothes, maybe you should consider dressing them in old disposable clothes, so if accidents do happen, you don't have to worry about taking the dirty clothes with you, you can just throw them away. So, you're prepared for the children on the flight, you've gone through airport security. What about what happens when you get to the hotel? You're finally there, but it isn't time to relax just yet. Accidents at airports can happen, but some may be avoided if some checks are carried out on arrival. Planning for the worst obviously is not the best way to settle into your new home, but do take a few moments to carry out some simple checks such as checking the fire escape route. Is it easy for the whole family to negotiate? If not, ask for a different room. Check all the electrical sockets in the room to ensure that they are safe from finger poking. Check all the furniture for sharp edges. Look out for loose rugs, that the railings on the balcony are suitable too. Don't forget the width between the railings in some countries is wider than it is allowed in the UK, so do make sure that they're not too wide. Check the hotel's public areas too, such as the pool, drinks machine, flooring. Is there a lifeguard on duty in the pool? Are there any bare electrical cables near drinks machines? Flooring, is it loose or jagged? Do you know how to get help in an emergency? What are the local rules for the beaches? Do you understand the flags? Even have a quick check to see if there's going to be any sea anemones in the water close to the shore. If there are, make sure that your children always have footwear on when they go in the sea. And don't forget, always ensure that is there adequate shade available, so make sure that the children can keep out of the sun for too long. The last bit I'm going to be talking about on these holiday stresses are hire cars, because if you're on a fly drive holiday, obviously a hire car is going to be a massive part of the holiday. And you have never seen a sad face on someone until you've come across a woman sitting on her suitcase outside a closed hire car office. This office wasn't due to open for another 2 hours, and she had posted the car keys into the return box, and then realised she left her handbag and passport in the car. So, care should be taken when picking up and returning a car. When you're picking it up, try not to pick up the car when it's dark. It's easy to miss dents and scratches in artificial light. If you are travelling in a group and you trust everyone, then the main driver could leave the luggage reclaim and go straight to pick up the car and get ahead of the queue. This should not be done though if the driver has any duty-free allowance in his luggage, because as you're well aware, duty-free can't be pulled and you need to have enough bodies there to allow for everything. If you feel really lucky, book a popular budget model car and then don't rush to go and pick it up. Take your time. They may actually run out of this model by the time you get there, and you could be in line for a free upgrade. But of course, you could end up with a worse model as well. You will need your credit card when you collect the car for security. It is unlikely that a debit card will be accepted. Some countries may insist on using the same card some companies may insist on using the same card that the original booking was made for, so you need to make sure if this is the case. If you are sent to collect your car from a large car park and you notice damage, don't drive it back to the office. Leave it, get back to the front desk to complain and insist that a member of staff comes with you to complete the handover. When it comes to the handover on the form, make sure that every part of the form is filled in. If a part is not relevant, then put a line through it. Don't leave any gaps. You should record the mileage on the form and how much fuel was left for you. Make sure that you understand the fuel charges. Do you need to return the car on empty or full? If it has to be full and you haven't been given a full tank, make sure this is noted on the paperwork and agree with a signature what you should do when returning the car. Also, if you do have to fill up the tank, keep your last receipt if it has a date and time so you can use it as proof in case of any disputes about whether the tank was full or not. It is the driver's responsibility to ensure that the car is road legal. Some countries have laws such as reflected vests must be carried, or in France it's illegal to have a sat-nav that lists fixed speed cameras, for example. When you collect the car, ensure that you have compiled a checklist of the local laws so that you ensure that you have everything supplied that is necessary to be road legal in that country. If you need a child seat, it's probably better to take your own. Child seats do have to be ordered well in advance, but they could still end up being missing. And normally these seats can actually be carried free of charge on your airline. And not only will it be a better fit for your child, it's probably going to be more hygienic as well. Finally, make sure that you know all the emergency telephone numbers and the instructions that need to be followed should you have a breakdown or an accident. And before you drive off, do make sure you take a few minutes to familiarise yourself with the car. And when you're returning the car, if you have to drop the car off when the office is closed, like the lady I mentioned a few moments ago, then try and take a photo of the car near the office to show that there wasn't any major damage on the vehicle. If the office is open but they were too busy to check the car over, write "decline to inspect" all over the form. If you did have an accident, you should obtain a local quote for the damage. Don't get the work done, but just get a quote so you can tell if the hire car company are trying to pull a fast one or not. When you get the credit card imprint back for the security, make sure you destroy it. Don't leave it lying around. Demand it back. Of course, it can be cheaper to hire a car locally, but if you do have a problem, it can be difficult to resolve once you're back home in the UK. But if you use a multinational company, then the local office should help you sort it out. They may try and say it's nothing to do with them, but the local office of these big boys should help out a dispute from one of the offices in another country. But don't despair, there is help available if you do have a dispute. There's the British Vehicle Rental and Leasing Association at www.bvrla.co.uk. This is primarily to promote the interest of its members, but there is a code of conduct for its members to follow, and you can complain to the association if you feel that the service you have received means that the member is breaking this code. And also there's the European Car Rental Conciliation Service, or www.ecrcs.eu. This helps customers with unresolved complaints concerning cross-border vehicle rentals within Europe. However, there are only around about half a dozen members that use this service, so the scope of the help available may be limited. So that's the end of my brief summary of some tips to help reduce any stresses that may come your way if you're going away this July and August. If you've got any tips of your own which work for you when you go away with kids or when you're travelling in busy airports, please do share them at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show.
Happy Radio.
Hi, this is Russell Hearn. Join me Fridays at 12 for a little pick-me-up. I'll be playing the music that stirs those warm memories and takes you to a special time and place. And Millie's here with her choice of fun apps for your phone too. So for a lighter look at life and some songs you'll never forget, tune in to seclosounds.org for some happy radio.
You can contact us or just keep up to date with travel news at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. You're listening to the John Guinn Travel Show on seclosounds.org. Seclo Sounds exists to bring people and communities together to celebrate all that's best about the city of Milton Keynes. We produce a variety of music and speech programmes, and you've heard some of the promos in this show, and we're produced by local people and run by over 60 volunteers. However, There's always room for more, so if you have a program idea or a skill that you want to offer, please send us an email to volunteers@seclosounds.org. And of course, as we're all volunteers, we can't operate without the help from our partners, and one such partner is Interaction. Seclo Sounds is based at the old rectory, which is the home of Interaction MK. They've been bringing arts to life in Milton Keynes for over 35 years. They use the arts to improve the life chances of disabled people and others in challenging circumstances through shared created activity. Their programs help participants to develop creative, personal and social skills. To find out more, please visit them at www.interactionmk.org.uk. You're listening to the John Guinn Travel Show on seclosounds.org. I was working on a contract last week and I had to travel all the way up to Morecambe, a place I've never been to before. The company I was working for insisted I use their vehicle to help reduce their costs for me to carry out the contract. Got there, did the work, turned around, come back, got half a mile down the road and then a warning light came on in the dashboard. I hadn't checked the car before I drove all that way, 200 odd miles. And I had another 200 miles to go home and I had a warning light and I didn't know the car breakdown procedures or what to do because it's not my vehicle. If only I had done the checks before I drove all the way up there to check that there was enough oil in the car. As it turns out, I got to a garage, put a litre of oil in and it was fine. But that should never have happened because I have the AA on my show. They talk about the checks you should do before you go away and I just didn't do it. I just got out of the house, got in the car and then hit the road. So, as a reminder to myself more than anything else, I'm now going to play back some of the interview I did with the AA with Gavin, and he's going to be talking about the checks you should do before you set off on any long journey.
When I was young, I can remember my dad doing some checks to the cars before I went off. Should people still be doing that with these new modern cars?
Absolutely. I think the fundamentals of a car haven't really changed since the early days. Cars still have four wheels, four tires, an engine, oil, coolant and a cooling fan, and those fundamental parts are still the same as they were back in the early days. One thing nowadays is we have is technology, but technology only goes so far. And what people really should be doing is if they're not sure what to check, look in the handbook. The handbook will actually explain all the checks that you should be doing, and just get into the routine of checking every week, or certainly no less than once a fortnight. And then particularly if you're going off on a long journey, for example at half term or any other holiday.
What sort of checks should they be looking out for?
Well, the basic checks, and we always talk about these checks, but they are pretty simple. And it's nothing so terribly complicated. You don't need a degree in electronics, car electronics to do these checks. We actually use the acronym FLOWER as a sort of aid memoir for the checks. And I can run it through with you, but FLOWER is F is for fuel. So if you are heading off for half term or for a longer journey, you just make sure you've got enough fuel in the tank. We recommend no less than a quarter of a tank of fuel, and that just gives you a little bit in reserve. If you do hit traffic or if you're in an unfamiliar area, it's always good to have a little bit of fuel in reserve. The L is for lights. Also, if you're driving, certainly it's always good to make sure you can be seen and obviously see where you're going. So walk around, check all the lights, reverse up to a wall and you can check the brake lights, check the reversing lights, check the headlights at full beam and also dipped, and then the O is oil. That's pretty self-explanatory. So to check the oil level. W is for water, and that's really also the coolant level. Now, in theory, your coolant level shouldn't actually drop because it's a sealed system. If it has actually dropped, you've got an issue, and obviously get it checked out. The other W is, or the other part of the W is windscreen wash. So also make sure you've got plenty of windscreen wash. E is electrics. That's really just checking to make sure that the cooling fan works. You can check that by putting on the car engine, and once it gets up to temperature, the cooling fan should cut in, and you should hear that whir under the bonnet, and that'll be a cooling fan. If it doesn't cut in, again, get it checked out. And then last but not least is R for rubber. So that's things like mainly the tyres. So tyres are very, very important. They what keep you on the ground. So check both the tread depth and also the tyre pressures as well. So make sure they're in good condition. Also check for any damage as well. And then also the other part of R is the rubber on the wiper blades. Wiper blades, they tend to last for no more than about a year. That's their kind of effective life. Beyond that, you're in borrowed time, and they don't cost a huge amount, and it's worth replacing them.
Yeah, I'm sure loads of people leave those until the last minute.
Absolutely.
Not something. Maybe I'm giving myself away here by saying that.
Well, it's the easiest thing in the world, to talk about these checks, but it really doesn't take long. It only takes 2-3 minutes. Walk around the car, check the tyres, check the oil level, and you can actually potentially prevent up to half of all breakdowns just by doing these simple checks and by keeping your car well serviced. So they do make a difference, and the last thing you want if you're going off for half term or on holiday is a breakdown.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a very good start to the journey or a trip home, would it?
No, not at all.
As well as the checks, is there any sort of emergency equipment that the driver should have on board? Because I know that some European countries, they have minimums that drivers must carry.
They do, yeah. If you're ever driving on the continent, obviously it's very, very important to actually check all the motoring regulations and requirements. Some countries, for example, require fluorescent jackets. They require spare bulbs, etc. Over in the UK, we don't really have compulsory equipment, but there are certainly definite things you should carry that's good to have. So things like sunglasses, for example. It's if you particularly if there's a low sun or if it's a very, very bright day, it can help reduce glare. Things like a spare bulb kit. If you get a blown bulb, it's good to be able to replace the bulb. A can of oil. Some cars, most cars do burn some oil. That's actually part of the that's kind of fairly standard. So it's good to be able to top up the oil. Things like a first aid kit. Certainly if you're travelling away from home and with the children, it's always useful to have a first aid kit. And then other basic things like a road atlas. I think that you can't necessarily always rely on your sat nav, so it's always good to have a road atlas with you in case as a backup, or a printed route. And then last but not least, very, very important, it's a fully charged mobile. If you do get stuck or if you do run into difficulty, very good to be able to call ahead and call your friends, family, and let them know that you're on your way and when they can expect you.
Yeah, the only time I broke down was when I didn't have my phone with me, so that's very important.
You're listening to the John Guinn Travel Show on seclosounds.org. So we're at the end of the travel show for this week. There's no travel news section because basically the travel news has been taken up with the security checks at airports. Although the Foreign and Commonwealth Office have come up with another travel warning for Kenya. It looks like Kenya is going to be seeing quite a lot of difficulty with tourism over the next few months or so because of the conflicts over there in the north of the country. The Foreign and Commonwealth Office have come up with another travel warning advising people not to travel, which is a real shame because it's one of my favourite countries and it's a great place to visit. But hopefully this will all settle down and sort itself out and tourism there will go back to normal, because I know that in a lot of the areas such as Mombasa, the local population do rely heavily on tourists coming in. Through the show today I've gone through the stresses of the school summer holidays, going away at the busiest time of the year for travel. Security, I've tried to explain how some of the checks are made with the x-ray machines, gone through the basics. I've talked about how to prepare for when you're travelling, how to make sure you're okay when you're travelling down to the airport. I've said that perhaps going down to the airport on the day of your flight is not a particularly good idea. I mentioned earlier that it took me over 5 hours to do a 3.5 hour journey. So if you're trying to get somewhere for a flight, that means you're going to miss it, especially when you take into account how early the gates actually close, how early the check-in closes. And you may feel that you've got 3 hours, but really you haven't. So travel down the night before, stay in a hotel. A lot of hotels, especially around Heathrow, Gatwick, do some great combined deals with car parking and the room for the night. Some travel companies, online companies, do mystery hotels. You could end up having a scratchy night's sleep in a poor hotel, but you could get a real great bargain when it comes to parking your car, combining it with these mystery hotels. Well worth looking into. I've done it myself. Hotel was at the end of the runway, was a bit noisy, but I think I saved nearly 45% on the price of this having car parking alone. And of course I didn't have to go up earlier to travel down to the airport. So my advice, travel down the night before, stay in a hotel, have a look around, get a combined hotel car parking bargain. If you've had any travel tips about how to survive the school summer holidays, please do share them with me at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. Likewise, if you've got anything you can add to what the AA said about checking cars before you depart, again, facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show, share your tips. And I hope you can join me next time on the Travel Show with John Guinn on setclosesounds.org. I nearly got the name wrong. setclosesounds.org, where each week I'll be checking it out before you check in.
Through the wilderness.
MK Pulse proudly sponsors Seclo Sounds. MK Pulse is Milton Keynes' local magazine, bringing helpful information on food, health, fashion, money, travel, culture, and much more to 66,000 readers every month. Plus news, views, and what's on from around the city. If it's happening in Milton Keynes, it's in MK Pulse, and it's available online at www.mkpulse.co.uk. MK Pulse and Seclo Sounds, the heart and soul of the city.